Welcome to Ricky Remembers. Today we're going to talk about a very special place in my heart, and I'm talking about Cubao. And most specifically, we're going to talk about the Cubao that I remember and love, the Cubao from the late 70s to the mid 80s. So, without any further ado, let's just get to it. But before we do that, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel or comment below for anything that obviously I may have forgotten or I didn't include in all of this. But also to guide you, I just have a very rough outline here, and it's made up of 7 headers, and those are the main locations within Cubao. Of course, Cubao is comprised of different buildings. So it's going to be number one, because it's the holidays. I'm going to start with COD, and then number two, Alley Mall. Obviously, there's a lot of stores within Alley Mall. So that will eat up a major part of this video. And then number three would be SM Cubao. After that would be that section that houses New Frontier Cinema and McDonald's and A&W and Pizza Hut and Isetan. And then, of course, Rustan's, which was in Cubao. And then also Coronet, Jollibee, and Mamunluk, that area along Aurora Boulevard. And then lastly, Fiesta Carnival. So let's get to it. The reason why I mentioned those 7 headlines or headers is so that if you want to jump to a particular chapter that feels more relevant for you, you can go ahead and do that. I will have it sectioned out in the description. So let's begin. The first one, like I said, because Christmas just passed and 2026 is around the corner, I wanted to start with COD. And of course, a lot of you out there also remember this when come Christmas time, COD would have that animatronic Christmas display in front of their mall. And it was maybe on the fourth, maybe the third or the fourth floor. You know, when you think about it, it wasn't really that high, but when you're 3 or 4 years old, it seems like it's, right up there in the sky. And so, yeah, it was a Christmas animatronic display similar to what they have in Disneyland, where they would have these moving things. Very, very basic and very primitive. But back then, it was such a delight and it was such a spectacle. So, of course, we remember our parents driving us out there, and then our dads or our moms hoisting us on their shoulders so that we could see or we can get a better view of that Christmas display, that animatronic display. I don't specifically remember what the display was. So, guys, please help me in the comments below. But I guess I'm just going to make this up. But I would imagine that there's a sleigh with Santa Claus, and then also maybe the nativity scene with the 3 wise men, and then Mother Mary and Joseph, and then the shepherds and the sheep, and then the angels. So I would imagine that's what the display was. But definitely there were moving things and there were colorful lights, and then we looked up at the facade of COD, which for the longest time I didn't know what it stood for, but apparently it's cash on delivery. Is that correct? Cash on delivery, which is weird because it's a department store. You go there to buy, they don't deliver anything. So please, guys, if you know anything more about this, did they ever deliver anything? Who owned COD? Maybe that's a great episode or a next episode where we talk about that particular mall, COD. I don't ever remember patronizing or buying anything or even entering COD for that matter. But I do know it's a department store. And yeah, they were really known for that Christmas display during December, and our parents would go there every year. I remember just one particular year where I was on my dad's shoulders watching that animatronic display. Please share your memories and your comments in the comment section below about what you remember about that COD display. And then after that, and I'll only mention this as an aside because I remember near COD, when you cross the street, there was a Goldilocks there, and I think that was the Rustan's building too. I remember that Goldilocks because that's where we went to get our birthday cakes. So I think for at least 2 or 3 birthdays, my mom got the birthday cakes there from Goldilocks, and everybody had the same birthday cake where it was the Batman and Robin or the Superman and Wonder Woman, that ceramic figurine that would easily break, but for us it was the best. And it wasn't very elaborate or anything, or it wasn't very intricate, but it was what everybody got, and you had those blue candles. So I think for the third, fourth, or fifth birthday, we all got our birthday cakes from Goldilocks with those ceramic Batman and Robin, Superman, and Wonder Woman ceramic figurines. Now we go to, I would say this would be the main section of this video, where we talk about Alley Mall. And Alley Mall is definitely a main section of Cubao that we know. So just from the outside, what I really remember, I'm not going to get into the whole Muhammad Ali and all of that because I was too young. I think that was 1976, and that was the year that I was born. When Thrilla in Manila happened, yeah, everybody knows it was named after Muhammad Ali and all of that. So I'm just going to talk about the alley mall that I grew up with from when I was 6, 7, 8, up to 9 years old. So what I remember about alley mall is that it's very brown. It's very brown and orange, which are very great mid-century colors, very stylish colors when you think about it. Because nowadays every mall is just white, silver, and steel and glass. There's no character or anything, no texture. So alley mall was very brown and very orange, and everybody talks about this as well. Where the main feature of the building itself was that circular parking lot, or that parking structure where you would drive and go around. Now, Mega Mall had it before, but yeah, I think that was the first. Alley Mall was the first mall that had that parking structure beside it. Again, just like COD, I don't remember ever parking there or ever going through um that circular parking structure. Anyway, the first thing I remember about Alley Mall, and this is when you enter that entrance from SM, when you enter the stairs going up, the first thing that I see is the Cinderella store. If you guys remember Cinderella, they were a retail store that had import goods. I remember I would get my and this was later on. They had Mossimo, they had Moschino, even they had Tommy Hilfiger, they had Maui and Sons. It was just a retail store that had imported goods. They had Esprit, so people would go to Cinderella to buy those. So I was a little too young for that back then, but I could imagine the older teenagers going to Cinderella for those fashionable imported clothes. And then, so you see Cinderella, and then when you turn right after Cinderella would be maybe 2 or 3 doors down would be Nova Fontana. And that, for a 6, 7 year old boy, Nova Fontana was the mecca. That's where we all went to buy toys. And back then, that's where we went for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe action figures. We went there to buy our first Transformers. We went there to buy all sorts of action figures. G.I. Joe, of course. And then for the girls, Barbie, of course, was there. And then there was a time when everybody made action figures of everything. Star Wars, obviously, when Star Wars or The Return of the Jedi came out, the action figures were there. But they also had a lot of, like, I remember A-Team had a line of action figures, and there were A-Team action figures. There were Black Star action figures. There was even a Dungeons and Dragons action figure line from the cartoon back in the 80s. So that was Nova Fontana. And that was very special to me because every birthday, every Christmas, every time I got good grades, my mom would we would all directly go to Nova Fontana, and she would buy me a toy as a reward or as a gift for my good grades or my good performance in school. So that was very memorable, and all those toys that were sold there. And then the other stores that I remember from Alley Mall would be, so that same entrance, or maybe it was a different entrance, but near that entrance, right beside the entrance, was a gift gate. So gift gate back then, It was this very, I would say, upscale and premium store. I don't remember ever buying anything in there because it was so expensive. And they had the Sanrio stuff, the Sanrio toys, the Hello Kitty toys, and then Lego was also sold in Giftgate. And they also had so Sanrio, Hello Kitty, Giftgate, and then Swatch. I remember when Swatch launched in the Philippines. I think Giftgate was the main partner or retailer of Swatch watches, and they would be available in Giftgate. Guys, I realized when we get older, our memories become fuzzier and fuzzier. So please help keep me honest here. If I'm being incorrect or anything, just mention it in the comments below. If there's something I remembered incorrectly, or if you want to add to it, the comment section is there. So that's Giftgate. And then when you go down the escalator in the same floor as the food court would be bioresearch. Bioresearch. And for me, bioresearch was distinct because it had that logo. It was very, I don't know how you describe it, but it was very stylish. It was a very stylish font. And it almost, if you missed the circle, you would think it was blow research, right? If you're paying attention, you would think it was blow research. But bio research was there, the only pet store or pet shop that you would find inside a mall. So they sold fish primarily in aquariums. They also sold birds and then a lot of pet food. I'm blanking if they really sold cats and dogs too, but maybe they did. Maybe they did sell puppies and kittens there. But I know they had a large window display of the pets, like the birds and the fish. So there might be puppies and kittens there as well. So that was bio research on the corner. I remember it was in the corner of that floor with where the food court was. And then if you go down that alley where bio research was, you would reach Han Manila. Han Manila. And I remember Han Manila because my dad always loved to go to Han Manila because obviously they sold guns and knives. And I remember very distinctly because on the counter of Han Manila was this giant Swiss knife, which had the blades would be rotating like that. It would move like that. The blades and the scissors. So every time we would go to Cubao, every time we would go to Alimol, no fail, my dad would stop by Han Manila, and my dad always had Swiss knives when I was growing up. But yeah, they sold guns and knives and other stuff that fathers were into. And then right beside Han Manila was Papemel Roti or Papemel Roti. I don't know how to pronounce that. Papemel Roti. And Papa Melroti was special because they were the only store that sold. It was like a curio shop, so everything wood, paper, stationery, all the cute stuff that you can adorn your room or your home with. But they had a lot of cutesy stuff. That was Papa Melroti. Later on, we would learn Papa Melroti was the name. The syllables were the names of the children of the owners, and then that was just later on. For the longest time, I thought Papa Melroti was a foreign store. I thought it was imported because of all the good stuff they had in there. So I think for the longest time, Papa Melroti was a mainstay there in Ali Mall. So they're right beside Han Manila. And then if you proceed, you turn the corner, and there were a couple of music stores there. And I remember that because I remember there was one store there that sold Roland keyboards and these electric guitars and everything. But it was mainly keyboards like Casio keyboards and Yamaha keyboards and Roland keyboards. So there were two music stores there. If anybody there remembers the names of those stores, or if you knew the owner, if you knew the family who owned those stores, that would be amazing if you could find that out and confirm that there really were music stores there right around the corner from Papa Melroti and Han Manila. And then at the corner of that, at the end of that, would be the Philippine Airlines ticketing office. And that was there for the longest time also. And I remember this because I have an aunt who worked for Philippine Airlines, and there was a time I saw her on the ticketing station. She was one of the the people manning the ticketing booth, and you could buy your or you could book your ticket through there. That's why I remember that it was there. And then once you walk a little bit more, that would be the lobby, and the cinema was there. So you could buy tickets and watch movies there from that entrance. And that entrance was the one that was in front of Rustan's as well, right? So Philippine Airlines and then the cinema. Now I remember that lobby because that's where Shakey's was. So as you approach Philippine Airlines, you would already smell the whiff of the pizza of Shakey's. And of course, as we remember from possibly the late 70s and the early 80s, Shakey's back then served beer. They served beer and they had bands that performed there. And I would imagine that you could smoke. And they were called combos. Combos. The bands were called combos and not bands. But yeah, they served beer and you can smoke, and there was live music, and then you can order your thin crust pizza, which obviously was delicious. Thin crust pizza, the hero sandwich, the spaghetti, skilletti, because it was served in a skillet. The milkshakes, of course, the hats that Shakey's gave away to the kids, and also the masks of Superman, Captain America, Spider Man. That's what I remember about Shakey's in general, not just the one in Cubao. And yeah, they had that distinct wallpaper, that yellow and red wallpaper as well. And then what else can I remember from Ali Mall? You look at my outline here. Okay, let's go back to the original entrance where you had the Cinderella. If you go down, right, and there was bio research on the left, there was a food court. There was a food court in Ali Mall, and I remember there was a Jollibee there, a Jollibee, and of course a sizzling plate. I could be wrong, but it wasn't as big as an SM food court. There were maybe 5 or 6 restaurants, maybe 3 or 4. But the two that I do remember is Jollibee and Sizzling Plate on the Alimal food court. Now, besides the food court, what I do remember is there used to be a steakhouse inside Alimal. We never ate there. I never ate there, but you can pass it along the corridor. And yeah, it had like you couldn't quite see inside, but there was like a special door, not a special door, but a wooden door that was there, and there was a steakhouse. Guys, if you could please help me remember, was it House of Minis or was that Vera Mall? Or they could both be there. I do also remember outside the entrance of Ali Mall there was a sign for San Mig. So there was a San Mig in there. I don't know if the San Mig was the steakhouse or there were separate entities altogether, but there was a steakhouse. That much I know. I'm pretty sure. And then also, in terms of food and restaurants, so I would imagine this was on the second floor. The second floor would be the entrances to the balcony of the cinema. They had the lodge orchestra, and then balcony. Anyway, the second floor of the cinema, you also had tucked away somewhere in a corner there was Trattoria Uno. Trattoria Uno. And I found out recently that Trattoria Uno was the precursor to Cibo. Before Cibo, there was Trattoria Uno and they were serving Italian food. I never ate there myself, but it was this small restaurant tucked away in the corner somewhere. They had a very nice logo as well, but it was small. Never ate there, but I would see it because after watching a movie, we would exit there for some reason. And so I guess we did park in that parking lot because there's an exit there to the parking lot near the Trattoria Uno restaurant. And what I remember in that area also was a Pec Pinon art gallery or a painting store. Pec Pinon. And I remember it because they had these very nice paintings for sale or on display. And there was also like a high-end salon there called Reveil. Reveil for hair. It sounded really exotic, like it was French or something like that. So Reveil for hair was there, and Pec Pignon. And then what else have I not covered? So I covered Shakey's and the cinema. For some reason, I didn't think we watched a lot of movies in Alley Mall for one, and I'll get into it later when we talk about Coronet. I think we watched more in Coronet. And knowing my dad, I think maybe Coronet was cheaper for whatever reason. But I don't remember watching a lot of movies in Alimal Cinema, we would watch in Coronet instead, or Coronet Theater. So I think the last one that I want to cover with Alimal is no, there's two more actually. Sorry, Babyland. So on the main floor, you had Cinderella and then Nova Fontana, which was the ones that are most important to me in Giftgate. There was a Babyland on the main hall as well. And Babyland was also like a toy store, but to differentiate from Nova Fontana, they had more of toys for babies and toddlers. So they had Fisher Price, those Fisher Price toys, Duplo, toys for smaller kids or younger kids. Were in Babyland. I know people like to talk about Blue Magic when they talk about Alimol and Cubao, but Blue Magic was later on. I remember I was already a teenager when Blue Magic came out. So in the early 80s, there was still no Blue Magic. So Babyland, and then also another one that I forgot was National Bookstore. The other entrance of Ali Mall, the one closer to the bus station where the bus lines were, when you enter through there, there was on the corner a huge National Bookstore. So that was like a main branch for National Bookstore. And of course, we went there for school supplies and sometimes gifts for Christmas because you had to buy the wrapping paper there. So National Bookstore. And then lastly, of course, and I really don't have a lot of memories, if any at all. I know a lot of people talk about Skate Town on the third floor of Ali Mall. I was a kid, so I would imagine the teenagers and the college crowd and even the older crowd would love hanging out at Skate Town. But I particularly don't have any specific memories about Skate Town. But I have to mention it, right? So if you have anything you want to comment about Skate Town, any specific memories you have about that place, please comment in the comment section below. And that is Ali Mall. And that we've covered like 20 minutes just on Ali Mall. I can imagine this video would be about an hour long. So that's Ali Mall. If there's anything I forgot, please comment in the comment section below. But just to round it up, Cinderella, Bio Research, Nova Fontana, Babyland, Papamel Roti, Han Manila, Giftgate, Philippine Airlines, Roland Store, Trattoria Uno, Pek Pinion, Reve for Hair, the food court that had Jollibee and the Sizzling Plate, National Bookstore, the Steakhouse, Skate Town, Shakey's, and the cinema. That was a mouthful. I hope you enjoyed that section. The next one, number 3, would be, like I said, so if you go down, there was SM Cubao. And SM Cubao, as I talked about with Alimol, if Alimol was orange and brown, SM Cubao was gray because it was concrete. I didn't know it back then, but it was a very brutalist structure or architecture. So very nondescript. So it was just gray and then the SM logo, blue and white. So one of the things that I remember about SM Cubao is that's where we went to buy the superhero costumes. And I remember this because the superhero costumes were pinned to the pillar of the store so that you can see what was available. So you had your Superman or your Batman, Captain Marvel, and so on. So we would go there to buy the superhero costume that you would wear, not for Halloween, but for a birthday party. So we would go there to buy that. And of course, my mom bought her shoes there and everything, and the shoes would descend from the ceiling. There was a hole in the ceiling or a square in the ceiling where the shoes would come from. There was a mic, and the lady would ask for a size 9 or whatever. And then size 9 seems big, size 5 or size 6, and they would come down from the ceiling. So the warehouse was in the ceiling of the floor, and they would descend from there. But also this is a rite of passage for Filipino kids in the is when you get lost in SM, the customer service, calling the parents of a lost boy or a lost girl, or calling the parents of a lost child, please claim Ricky in the customer service department. Thank you. And your mom or your dad would come rushing and awkward laugh in their faces, like, where were you? And then as soon as they turn, they would spank you because you gave them a heart attack or a nervous breakdown from getting lost in the mall. Who did not get lost in Cubao or SM Cubao? You did not have a childhood. Sorry, because we were you were crazy and we were rambunctious and rowdy and whatever. No fail. At one point in your childhood, you got lost there and you got sent to the customer service and they would make that announcement. And the other thing that I remember about SM Cubao is when you go down to the food court of SM Cubao, there was this studio right there, and it was separate from everything. It had glass walls. It was the AAK studio. It was a karate studio. So it was a special school, and I felt like only the rich kids could afford to go there on the summer or even on weekends. And you would watch from afar, like, oh my God. And it was air conditioned. The food court was air conditioned, but it had their own separate air condition in there. So it was a glass window or a glass display, and you could watch from outside all these rich kids learning karate and ballet. So ballet for the girls, karate for the boys, and that they had that in the food court. It was an AAK studio. I remembered well. I don't forget what AAK stood for, but it was a karate studio and a ballet classes because they had the bar, the bar for the ballerinas. And you would watch them. And sometimes it had that blind, that white blinds that would go like that so that people won't be able to see. But sometimes it would be open. Anyway, that's what I remember about SM Cubao. And then the food court, of course, where they had digman, sandosenang halo-halo, and then sizzling plate. What food court does not have the sizzling plate? Where they had the actual different types of steaks there on the counter, and they did not look very appetizing because they've been sitting there for hours. So you had a rib eye, a porterhouse, a T-bone, so on and so forth. I don't remember ever eating in sizzling plate nor my parents, but I do remember eating in kimchi. Kimchi was one of the first Korean restaurants in the Philippines, and it's not the Korean restaurant that we know where you cook it yourself. You went there for their beef stew, which was bulgogi. But yeah, the that together with the bean sprouts or the bean sprouts, toge. Yeah, no, let's make it easy. You get a bowl of rice, beef stew that was so substantial. You could eat maybe 3 cups of rice with that because the sauce was so delicious. And then, your vegetables would be your bean sprouts. But it was delicious. So SM Food Court, Digman, kimchi, and sizzling plate. Of course, there were easily 10 more other restaurants, but I don't remember them. I only remember uh, Digman, kimchi, and sizzling plate and the customer service. So to sum up, SM Cubao, a place to get the superhero costumes. The shoes would descend from the ceiling, and then the AAK studio and the ballet classes, and then the food court with Digman, kimchi, and sizzling plate. And then, of course, the customer service where if you got lost, you got sent there and your parents would pick you up from there. So that's SM Cubao. That was a good 10 minutes. And then we move on to let's move on to a weird area of not a weird, but it's not a building per se, but where the New Frontier Cinema was or is. So that place, that area is special because that's where the first McDonald's was in Cubao. Wasn't the first McDonald's in the Philippines or in Manila, but in Cubao, that's where the first McDonald's was, right beside the New Frontier Cinema. And I remember it well because I had my 7th birthday in McDonald's Cubao. And I remember it being very special because it felt that the McDonald's, the AC or the air conditioning was so strong that you felt like you were in the States. Like it was a different type. The smell was different. The aircon was strong. So you actually felt you were in the States. And I remember that birthday because they had back then a Ronald McDonald shaped birthday cake. And if you were used to the Goldilocks cake where it was just this rectangle, that was special. That was different. So it had the Ronald McDonald shaped birthday cake, and the candle was freaking shaped like the number of your age or of your birthday. So if I turned 7, maybe I turned 6. I turned 7. The candle was shaped like a 7. And that was unheard of back then. Back then we only had those blue candles. So anyway, I had a Ronald McDonald shaped birthday cake and a birthday candle shaped in the number 7. I never thanked my mom for it, my mom and my dad, but thank you so much, mom and dad, for whatever you had to do or whatever sacrifice you did so that I could celebrate my birthday, very special birthday, very memorable birthday in McDonald's when it was cool, when it was very new. I could imagine it must have cost a pretty penny back then. I remember my friends from school were invited, and I remember the gifts they gave me. I remember my mom giving me my first E-Man action figure. It was a Man E Faces figure. And one of my classmates gave me a Choose Your Own Adventure book, Gorga the Space Monster. That was his gift to me. I even remember my classmates who went. Mona Cunha, rest in peace, my friend, my brother. Mona Cunha, J.A. Ventura, Joseph Ventura, who's like a famous chef back in the Philippines now, and Jason Pantoja. Those three kids were my classmates, and they were my guests in that birthday. So anyway, thank you, mom and dad, for all the sacrifice that you did so I can have my birthday at McDonald's. And what I remember also was in that new Frontier Cinema, they had like a satellite store for Giftgate. I remember that because they sold Lego sets in there. So they had like a satellite store for the Giftgate in Ali Mall. Um, and then right beside Giftgate was the very first Pizza Hut as well. So if you had Shakey's in Alley Mall, you had Pizza Hut right beside the New Frontier Cinema. And then across from McDonald's or right beside McDonald's, later on, A&W opened there. And I remember A&W because they served the root beer float. And then when you cross the street from Pizza Hut is where in that corner was Isetan. Isetan was also a department store. That was like COD. Later on, funnily enough, I thought I saw that Isetan there was an Isetan in Singapore. So I thought, oh, maybe they were a Chinese conglomerate or something. But there was an Isetan there and there was an Isetan in Singapore. So that is that section there. You know what? I am gonna end here, and I will call that part one of our walk down memory lane of Cubao. And I'll call it an episode because it's been 35 minutes. In part two, we will talk about Rustan's Fiesta Carnival and that section along Aurora Boulevard where there is Coronet, the cinema, the theater, Jollibee, and Maman Look. So I'll see you on part two of this walk down memory lane of the Cubao that I remember and the Cubao that I love from the late 70s to the mid 80s. This has been Ricky Remembers. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, subscribe, and comment below if you enjoyed that content. Thank you so much.